Alright, and welcome back. This is part 2 now of the RPG Maker RMVXAce review. And right now we are going to be looking at the battle manager before we get too deep into actually programming something. I want to kind of go over the battle manager, and with the going over it, we are going to try to incorporate it into the new version of GTBS, so that of course we follow the, so to speak, the standard that everyone else does when we initialize things. So here we have got inside of the battle manager, when you say setup, you provide it the troop ID, whether or not you can escape and whether or not you can lose. Now this init members is going to create a phase object, and when it does, it's going to set it to the init phase. So you can create phases of battle that are based off of symbols. So you could say actor's turn, command window, enemy action, or whatever you want. And these have always traditionally, again in RPG Maker XP and VX, always been handled just by a number. So we would just increment it by 1, where they didn't really have any real value or meaning. So using symbols is a much easier and more readable way to understand kind of what's going on. So anyways, it will go through here and it'll set all these different flags and create these items. So you've got whether or not it's a preemptive attack, whether or not it's a surprise attack, who the currently selected actor is, who the actor is who is going to, or the action which is being forced upon whomever is acting, and then you've got the battle background sound and background music for the map, and then who is in the actions list. Now the actions list is basically, or the action battlers, is a list of people who are going to take actions during this particular time. So what you could do is say, for a more real-time situation, you add the action battlers to that list, and of course as they're added to it, they're immediately pulled out and then they'll perform whatever action, while the UI necessarily can stay separate from the actions and things along those lines. So you can create a more real-time situation. Now you can do that with the older systems as well, and many of the other systems actually implemented that, even though RPG Maker VX had this. But it wasn't really used heavily, other than to set the order of the actions that would occur. So and then it would still maintain on a particular phase in order to carry out that actor's action. And we may actually look at doing something along those lines, but being now that we can, you can actually assign a method to be run when this particular action becomes completed. It allows us to curb the process of not having to go through a top to bottom process. In other words, that we need to maintain that. It's the action phase and everyone has to perform their actions during this, and as soon as they're done, then go back to the input phase where everyone can select your actions and things along those lines. So by being able to get away from that, we should be able to build a much more complex system. So then we've got rate of preemptive, rate of surprise. It will go and determine that based upon the map that you're on. And then of course it will save the current background music, etc., and then you say play background music, which then it will determine the background music to be played and it will play that. And then when you win, etc., resume the old music. So all of that's built into the system now. You don't have to maintain that. And then of course some basic commands, such as what is the escape ratio. So if you wanted to change how often you can escape, etc., or the formula that determines whether or not you can escape, then this is where you would change it, is just right here. And then of course in turn, and then turn end, these are just phases that just say, is it equal to this or is it equal to this? And then of course on an aborting, that would be when it's canceling out of the scene. But all of these are just different phases that will be used in the scene battle, which can then be So basically, the battle manager is a collection of common commands that are called during battle, so that being in such a common location and accessible from anywhere because it's a module, it can be the information is a little bit more accessible than it was in previous, and by making it that way and separate of the battle system, you can actually maintain and separate a bunch of this stuff. So that's kind of the gist, and so let's go ahead and look into it a little bit here. So right here we've got our battle start. So this here will increment the battle count command to say you've been in X number of battles. And then there are the start party and troop situations. So let's go ahead and look this one up. So we've got two methods, one for game battler, which is the actors, and one for game unit. So let's look at unit here. It just says go through each one and run the one for the battler. So that's easy enough. Go back, run it again, and look at the battler, and then it just says initialize your TP, which TP is like your tactical points or whatever, wasn't it, for the new version? And it just determines a random number and sets the value to 25, so it's kind of pointless. But even so, that is the initialize process. So it basically says, well, here's how many TP points you have to start effectively, and then it sets the flag to say that you're in battle. Then it goes through and it will create and say, well, here are all these different enemies, and here is the emerge command. So it basically says, hey, so-and-so is on the battlefield. And then it will determine whether or not you had a preemptive battle, and it will say, hey, preemptive battles, and surprise, etc. And then while those messages are displayed, you have to wait for it until it's complete, and then it will return. And then, of course, it will return doing whatever else it needed. So let's look at battle start. How often is it called? Where is it called? Etc. So in our scene map, we've got a sound method, which is not the one we're looking for. But what I'm guessing we're going to be seeing is inside of the battle. So here we've got our scene battle, and that's what we're looking at right now. And this one here basically says, go ahead and start the battle, process any events that need to occur, and then start the party command selection. So the start party command selection, of course, is just going to set some variables to say, go ahead and prepare for the first user input. So I'm interested in what this process event does. So let's take a look at that. And it is right here. So here we say, while it's not changing scenes, then run the interpreter update for the game troop, and then set up any battle events. So that basically says if there's any auto run or whatever events that should be occurring, and they should occur during battle, then go through and run those. If there's any messages, wait for that. If there's any effects happening, then perform those. If there's any forced actions that need to be done, perform those, and then determine a win or loss. Basically determine whether or not you should win based upon that, which could be as simple as set a auto escape when the boss kicks your butt too badly, and it's that generic RPG, he's going to kick your butt but he's going to let you live type thing, and or you jump out of battle and somehow you're miraculously saved, or whatever. And then basically it says if you're finished processing, is what that means, then go ahead and break, and then otherwise update for wait. Now update for wait, I'm going to guess, but we're going to put def on the front of it there so that we get only the definition. It says update basic, and update basic is part of the, looks like there's two of them here, so that one there is the this is the subversion. Since this is window battle, it's less than scene base, so we'll go look at that one next. Basically says stop the timer, not stop, but update the timer, update the troop, update the sprite set, update the viewport and the message window. And then of course the battlers and their images are all part of the sprite set, so they'll all be updated there. Enemy actions, things like that, will all be updated right there. So looks like we've I mean, really not too many changes, but I mean, just playing with this, you should be able to figure out most of exactly how that goes. So we're just going to go ahead and remove that script. We're just going to add a new one here. And we're just going to go ahead and call this GTBS 2.0. Why not, right? Because we're starting anew in the brand new system, and we want to start and create our new system here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this scene battle, I cannot type, battle TBS. Now, why do I specifically specify a different scene name than just scene battle? Well, the reason why is because I want this to be used in conjunction with another battle system. In other words, that I don't want the TBS to be the only battle system that you have, that you're forced to use throughout the entire game if you don't want to. If you want to turn it on and off, you can do that. I've seen it used successfully a lot of times that way, and I think it's just better to give people the option to do what they'd like. So that's what's there. Anyways, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to say def start. Okay, then post start. These again are the base methods. If we come back here and we look at the base, scroll all the way back up to the top here, we got start, post start, update, pre-terminate, and terminate. Okay, so we're going to go back down here to our GTBS 2.0. Okay, so we got start, we got def, and then the next one here is post start, and then we've got update, and we've got pre-terminate, and then we've got terminate. Now, we don't actually have to specify all of these here, but I like to just go ahead and start it off that way. So we just basically, so this is a very, very basic scene saying don't do anything really, but so the update method, and let's just check it over here in the scene base, but the update method here doesn't actually have anything in it, but it does have this method here called update basic. So the update says update basic. So all we have to do in our GTBS 2.0 here is say super, and then it'll update the graphics and input. So then of course we add whatever other update scenarios that we want or need, etc. here. So let's go ahead and start thinking about this. What do we need to do to start a battle? So there's a number of different things, and I unfortunately don't have GTBS loaded for VX on this virtual machine, but I could load up it for XP. But the idea here is that we need to initialize everything that would normally start. So what we would do is place battlers, or better yet, create background, which would be the sprite set. So we'll just say create sprite set. And technically speaking, you could create the battlers underneath that. So I'll actually remove that. Well, you know what? Actually, yeah, I'm gonna keep that out right there. What we'll do is for the post start, that's where we'll do our process starting event, and then we will also do, what is it? Actually, that needs to occur after place actors. Now, the place actors being the placement option in the battle system that will allow you to choose the options of where you want to place your actors. If there are no places to act them, then of course it will just go ahead and proceed with battle, unless there are no actors, in which case it'll have an abort routine and say, well, go ahead and jump out of this entirely. So Let's see. So we've got place actors, and then up here in this battle set, we want to say initialize variables. But that should have some sort of a recovery routine to say if you're jumping to another sub-scene, such as that, carry out that particular battle action, then what we can, what we'd want to do is to not necessarily initialize them, but to catch what we'd saved last time. If they exist, then of course, then go ahead and provide that information. So when we call that subscene, we need to make sure that we say, all right, well, here's the terminate routine to say save your data, so that when you return to the scene, then it can recreate the battle right where you were, and then just go ahead and resume. That'll need to keep all of the enemies who are in there, what direction they were facing, etc. So we'll have to get all of that information and then go do that. So that's a bit of a complex bit, but I mean it's something that we should all probably learn at some point. I've been trying to avoid it for a long time, but anyways, so let's go ahead and we're going to actually take a look at our old RPG Maker VX, and with that, let's see, let's just go to my downloads, and I've got the GTBS in here somewheres. There we are. Alright, so this is the base project for RPG Maker VX with GTBS embedded. And so if we come up here and we start looking at the scene battle, we go ahead and we define a couple of things. This stuff here was mostly for, this stuff right here was for whether or not it's VX or whether or not it's XP. But being that GTBS ACE is going to be, well, it is the new standard respectively, and there already is a version for these other two. I don't think we're actually going to update the VX version with the new features that we add with the ACE version, unless someone of course wants to port them down. But these are the calculation methods in order to determine how the tile size and how big the screen is, things along those lines, in order to determine that. And so by doing this, we're going to, in ACE we're going to remove this because we don't need it any longer, because we're not going to be doing the multi-version compatible single version of GTBS. But if we look down here, this is some very important information. So this was the attack scopes to determine whether or not which scope items, and these are database selections. So if we go back over here to ACE, oops, did I just hit cancel on that? I did just hit cancel. I just lost those changes, but that's okay. They weren't really all that many. Make sure you always hit OK, or at least apply. Anyway, so if we come in here and we look at our skills, so here we've got our skills, and our scope is this. So 0 is none, 1 is one enemy, 2, etc. So now we've got these random 4 enemies, and so we're going to have to change those scopes again for ACE. But by putting them up here at the top, if you ever wanted to change that, so you want to repurpose 3 random to be a ally hill rather than an enemy, then you could actually change that just by modifying this this section right up here at the top to specify which scope of skills, etc. Item IDs actually determines that. So with that, we can then come down here and we can look at our main method. Our main method here basically said start, perform your transition, which is actually done as part of the base scene now, and then post start. So I tried to follow pretty similar, and then of course I just perform a terminate after I have done the update. Now this right here is the update basic. and then this here is the scene changing, which is managed in the scene manager. So all we need to do now is just effectively update and then do our post start, etc. So our start says clear the next scene, create the map, change the music, create any temporary information that we need for the battle, go through those events and determine